couch, I'm ready to play fantasy. I know I turned 2 in a day, but the lace isn't hot in my veins. I can turn 2 in every way, so I turn to YouTube today and smash play. I'm prepared to listen. The X-Fippin' wit got me looking way past the pitches. Statistics all that I know, and I know that who is on first, he can say I'm ready to go. I ain't trying to steal second or third, cause I wanna win first. How am I to put all of these numbers to words? I know the terms from A to Z, it's like a gift and a curse. I know the difference between a splitter and a curve, but if I can't put it into points, man, then what's it worth? I need the truth, I need knowledge. Found this podcast with all of it, but what they call it? Turn 2. Turn 2, what it do? Win leagues, catch out. Peace.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Turn 2 podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Williams. You can find me on Twitter at MATTWI77IMS. Joining me as always is over, if you're watching live, over on the other corner is Mr. Brian Seymour. We have a couple of special guests I'll get to in a minute. But we are here continuing our divisional breakdown on the AL East. Brian, what is up?
Not a lot, man. Well, actually, yeah, a lot. I'm in, I think, 5 different draft champions right now, so I may be on the clock during – actually, I was on the clock on the 15 turn right before we got on the air, so I hurried up and took 2 players after pick 400 that nobody would really be interested in. So a lot of stuff going on. We got labor negotiations that we're not going to focus on too much today, but I'm excited for baseball and excited to talk to today's guests.
All right, so let's get right into today's guest. Our first guest, former NFBC main event winner, one of the co-hosts over at the amazing Launch Angle podcast, Mr. Rob Silver. What is up, Rob? Your first time on the show.
It is. It's special. I'm a bit nervous. It's probably going to only last 5-10 minutes, but I might be coming back again because I like it. No, it's great to be here. Thanks for asking me.
And our other guest, another co-host on another amazing podcast, Mr. Jason Collette over at RotoWire. He does a sleeper in the bus over with Paul Spohr and Justin Mason. Jason, you're also your first time on the show.
Yeah, it is, and I'm still hoping to get one of those main event things one of these years. Well, it wasn't in the cards, but I did have a very profitable year last year. Came out in the black. I was happy. Wife was even happier. So hoping for a repeat of that this year.
Yeah, I've it's funny. I've actually not jumped in a main event before. I've done I just haven't had the time or the blessing from my wife quite yet, but I'm getting there. I'm just basically overflowing with draft champions leagues and MEQs, which for anyone just who doesn't play those, they're basically main event qualifiers. The grand prize is winning a free entry into the main event. So we're going to continue our series. Everyone, if you haven't been following along, every single week we've been breaking down a new division, going just team by team, going through the over and undervalued players. And we've done the entire National League. We're now moving over into the American League East. Rob is a Blue Jays fan. Jason, the Rays fan. The sister cities connection, bringing them here. The partnership that never was, but these shows always go long. So we're just going to jump right into it here. So starting with our guest as always, Rob, who is your underrated hitter, the most undervalued hitter right now in fantasy for the American League East?
It's a tough division to pick underrated players more generally because Yankees and Red Sox are rarely underrated, and Jason and I may get into this later with some of his picks. The Rays don't play their players enough for anybody to be underrated because they have to play enough for that to happen. And the Jays are obviously a sexy team, so it's tough to find somebody there. So I'm picking a hitter from Baltimore, which I know is swimming a bit against the current. Trey Mancini. I love Trey Mancini, and I have kind of labeled him this year's Mitch Haniger, which is, not a perfect analogy. But when I look at what Trey Mancini has done, first off, in his career, his 162-game average is 85 runs, 28 home runs, 82 RBIs, 271. It's the cliche of all cliches, not just this year, the last few years, that power is everywhere. You don't need to pick power because you can just find power. And there's, of course, truth to that. What isn't everywhere is power with a decent batting average. And I think Trey Mancini gives you that power with a decent batting average. Last year, he was coming back from cancer. And given he was coming back from cancer, he actually had a remarkably good season. All his underlying metrics were rock solid, if not better. He wore down towards the end of the season, which is not unreasonable given cancer. But I think with a full off season of working out and hopefully good health for him, I think he can do as well as he did in 2019. In 2019, he was a top 40 player according to the Rasball player rater. And given where you're getting him, which last 2 weeks in NFBC Draft Champions is 190th. To me, there is a ton of upside with Trey Mancini. So despite the ballpark changes, I still love Trey Mancini and hope he gets even cheaper as we head towards March.
How do you like him? I mean, right now we'll get to this player next week, Jose Abreu. I should talk to Vlad about this because he's very high on Abreu. I'm not as he's just locked in on the consistent RBIs, being on a great offense. But it just seems like he's going so much earlier than the massive glob of first basemen behind him. Let's Jared Walsh, Reese Hoskins, Josh Bell, CJ Cron, and Trey Mancini. So you're just saying, do you like him just as much as that whole bit? Because he's going just pretty much just behind there. So does that have a lot to do with the undervalued much? I mean,
For sure.
Is that the reason?
So I mean, I'm not going to badmouth Jose Abreu. I love Jose Abreu. If I could have
price,
Jose
right?
Abreu on my fantasy teams, of course I'd like Jose.
In fantasy, if you don't like a player's value, you hate them. You can't like them.
Very binary industry, right?
Absolutely. My problem is where Jose Abreu is going. When I think about how my NFBC drafts are going to go this year, I'm going to have to be doing other things. So I'm either going to still need starting pitching. Hopefully there's still a closer available, or I'm going to need somebody with speed. So as I look at it, it's not that I'm anti Jose Abreu. It's if I'm taking Jose, it's the every draft is like this. It's a whack-a-mole game. So yeah, I'd love to have Jose Abreu on my team. It's just do I already have enough pitching, enough speed, and closers locked down? And it's really hard for me to imagine myself being in a position when I need to take Jose Abreu. And it's not that there's anything right. I don't think Vlad's smart as heck. He's one of my closest friends. But and he builds teams the way he builds teams, and he obviously has tremendous success with it. But when I think about how I'm going to be building teams, there's just something else I'm going to have to be doing around where Jose Abreu goes. Whereas where Mr. Mancini goes, I have the luxury to be able to focus in on power because hopefully by then I've got enough speed, I've got enough pitching, so I can focus in on decent batting average power.
All right, so we're talking about Trey Mancini, Rob's most undervalued hitter for the AL East. What do you think, Jason? Are you a big Trey Mancini fan? Do you think a year coming back from cancer, another full off season to work in, maybe a little extra because of the lockout? Do you think he can kind of return back to what he was, or do you think those times are gone? Do you think we can see a complete resurgence here?
I mean, I'm certainly at the price he's at. My DC went early in the 16th round. That's beautiful. Jose Abreu went in the middle of the 7th. I had a chance of taking Jose Abreu with the 3rd pick of that round, but getting to Rob's point, looking at how I'd put the roster together, I ended up going with Jazz Chisholm there instead, just looking at how I was building the rest of the roster. And in fact, I didn't even address first base. I was hoping to get Mancini later, but he went in that round. So I ended up taking Dahlbeck on the way back around. And I have Tristan Cassis in the reserves to protect that risky investment. But that's where I've put that. But the thing about Mancini is just the volume play. As long as his body will hold up, he should play 100 and XX games, however many we have. He should be out there every day. And there's value in a guy that's going to be out there every single day. And the park, it may take a few home runs from him. Derek Carty had a wonderful thread on it today talking about, I think, like 3 to 4 home runs over the course of the season for him. If you haven't read his thread, go read that. But the new dimensions could also help his batting average because left field becomes something of a headache to play. It's now the deepest left field in all of baseball. And so maybe it starts playing like Coors Field in that regard, because left fielders typically aren't great defenders. And now they're going to have to show a little more range. And so some things that we could have a lot of layups, that singles because they're trying to play no doubles defense, or they're playing too far in. It goes, it hits that wall, bounces around. I'm very curious to see how left field plays this year, not for the lack of home runs, but what it does to the line drives and everything else that have just usually gone for doubles or singles because they can play shallow enough to cut those things off.
We're talking about Trey Mancini for an undervalued player this year. I love Camden Yards. I love the Orioles, how they didn't, like any other team, like, oh, we want to move we want to move the wall back like 5 feet. They like went for it. Like they went from one of the best to one of the worst. Like it's insane. I mean, usually people aren't drafting as early as they are now. I mean, I think the NFBC is having their most profitable off season of all time, regardless of the lockout. Just, I guess, I don't know what that is, but people are just drafting earlier and earlier and earlier. It's just the way it has been. But anyone who invested in like Ryan Mountcastle, they might not be as happy. But like you said, it'll be interesting to see how that plays as far as like the batting average, the drop ins. Maybe Jorge Mateo gets a few more triples out of this thing. What do you think, Brian? Trey Mancini, are you on board?
Yeah, I am. I'll keep it short and sweet because these guys gave really good analysis already. But I love what Jason said. Yeah, I'm all about volume, especially in these draft champions. That's what it's about. And Mancini, obviously the cancer scare happened. But other than that, you look up and down his career, he is always on the field. I love it. And yeah, you are actually seeing his price drop a bit. I actually see the last 10 draft champions, he's now going 200, was more like 190 prior to that. So it is dropping a little bit, but I'm with these two guys. Yeah, I think Mancini is a good target, even with the change at Camden. So count me in.
All right, moving over to Jason's pick for the most underrated hitter in the American League East. Who's your pick?
So I think we're all allowed one homer pick. So this was mine. And I said Yandy Diaz here because when I look at, we've talked about, I've heard a lot about third base being such a shallow position this year. And yet Yandy Diaz is 39th at third base. And one of the complaints, yes, he's been a big, massive dude with probably the largest biceps in baseball with that. But the complaint forever has been, is he ever going to elevate the baseball? Can he pull the baseball? I openly commented last year, I was surprised the league did not reverse shift him last year because he was hitting so much on the ground or just off the ground to the right side of the field last year. And then when teams actually started to align it a little bit, then he started pulling the ball. Then he started elevating the ball. And like if you go to StatCast and look at the rolling graphs and the breakdowns, you can see in the second half of the season, Yandy Diaz finally started elevating the baseball and pulling the baseball, something we've been wanting him to do forever. And so when you look at that, and you look at the quality of contact, like in the second half, he had top 30 average exit velocity. Very similar numbers to Franmil Reyes in the second half of the season. Exact same average fly ball distance as Jordan Alvarez in the second half of the season. It's like when he wants to hit for power, he can. Rob made the point earlier about playing every day. Yeah, that's something Tampa Bay doesn't do. They like to, give guys a break, particularly outfielders when they're playing on the fake stuff. But with Diaz, he can play third base. He can play first base when it's a left-handed pitcher. So he's going to be out there more often than not. I also believe he is a trade factor this year. He's not going to finish the season with the club, but if he goes somewhere else, it will be for more playing time. But at his current price, where he's sitting, and with the dual eligibility, I've been picking him up, and I like it. Even if he wasn't on my favorite team, this was somebody I would be targeting in the reserves because of that dual flexibility and the growth he showed in the second half, matching what we've been looking for him forever.
I'm wondering why isn't that Robert Van Skyok found this guy yet? He's the guy who, for anyone who doesn't know who he is, he's the guy who turned around Justin Turner, JD Martinez, and turned them into beasts. I'm just wondering why hasn't someone just tried to harness his power into the full potential it could possibly.
When your biceps are that big, there's only so much flexibility that your swing has. Right?
You can't get around.
He tries to uppercut, but he can't get close enough to his body. That makes sense.
Really, the thing with him, though, when you look at his spray chart, I even looked at his home runs. It's like what he does is he tends to hit the higher velocity pitches back up the middle into right center field. He's got enough power to do that, hits those out for home runs. The home runs that he pulls tends to be the off speed and the breaking stuff, but that's the kind of play coverage he has. He can hit to all fields. And in a day and age where the league-wide batting average is 246, 247, somebody that he'll just hit wherever you pitch it, but now he's starting to show more power. I'm intrigued. And like I said, favorite club, not favorite club. This kind of growth profile is what attracts me to players.
All All right, we're talking about Yandy Diaz as Jason's most undervalued player in the American League East. Rob, what do you think? Yandy Diaz, he said the thing about third base is definitely valid, as I've waited on middle or corner infield quite late in drafts. He can be a very, very attractive option at a certain point.
Yeah, first off, Tyler O'Neill is deeply, deeply offended by any talk that his arms aren't the biggest arms in baseball. And I say the comments that I'm about to say with the greatest of respect, my friend Jason. If you're playing in a roto league that uses StatCast data as categories, so if exit velocity is a category in your leagues, then you should be all over Yandy Diaz. But like Yandy Diaz, when I look at him from the majors, minors, like Cuba, like I don't know what leagues he's played in. He's had 4,262 appearances in all levels of baseball, and he's hit 63 home runs in 4,262. So I get the underlying metrics have been good since the day he debuted. Like they've always been good, but and the ground ball rate's gotten better, but it's still over 50%. So call me a little skeptical that he's going to be usable. And I get in a 50-round draft champions, you at a certain point just need guys who are going to play. So I'm not suggesting that he is undraftable or anything. Jason's going to bring up a guy later who I would say is pretty much undraftable. I'm poking because I love Jason. It's called foreshadowing. But Yandy Diaz is obviously not, and he's a super valuable real baseball player for Tampa in terms of how he as a puzzle piece fits into the team. I am just skeptical, certainly in like redraft leagues with 7-man benches. He's a guy who's on the waiver wire, who is always going to be on the waiver wire, who's going to be picked up and dropped, in a 26-week season. If we have a 26-week season, 23 times people are going to pick him up and then immediately drop Yandy Diaz. And I think that's about right. So I could be wrong, but in the leagues I play in, I have absolutely no interest in Yandy Diaz for this year, if I'm being honest.
And I took him in the 29th round in mine.
That's fine.
Talking
Not
about
Rob,
but Brian, do you have any interest here? What side? You're the tiebreaker. You have to pick your favorite, Jason or Rob. Who's your favorite?
This is a tough one, but I'm going with Jason on this one, and I agree. I don't think he's just being a homer. The eligibility that late. Now, traditionally with eligibility, I kind of like to get that sorted out earlier in drafts, not necessarily reach for guys, but that earlier eligibility gives me freedom later to kind of do whatever I need. But so many times that late, you talked about a third base can occasionally be a cesspool kind of this year. So you get late like that. And frankly, first base, when you get that far back and you see Yandy sitting there, the games played does worry me. The trade candidate thing is definitely intriguing. But yeah, that kind of eligibility that late, I am intrigued by. I'm not a huge fan of the skills, and I wish I knew that the playing time was going to be there a little bit more. But when you're back there and you're deciding between Yandy Diaz, Hunter Dozier, Brian Anderson,
Wilmer Flores,
Patrick Wisdom. Things are interesting to say the least. So I have some intrigue with them. I have some shares already of Diaz for sure. But it's kind of an eligibility play, I think, for me mainly. Yeah,
I kind of agree. I kind of agree with that. It's I brought up Wilmer Flores half serious, half joking. I mean, he's like a full-time platoon player, still managed to crank out 18 home runs. I think it's dependent. You got to be in those deeper formats. I can't see how I agree with Rob, and I'm not sure how I could sleep at night with him on a regular 15 team 7-man bench. But I do like him, but yeah, we'll see. Brian, as we are falling way behind schedule, which is always my fault. Who is your underrated player for the American League East here?
I'll keep it short and sweet. I'm going to go to the catcher position, and I'm going to go to the Red Sox with Christian Vasquez. I think he's fallen just entirely too far down. ADP that I'm looking at in the last 10 draft champions is about 225. He has settled in around that for most of the offseason from what I've seen. Obviously not a good year last year. Was kind of punch lifts after we saw power from him a couple of years ago. But I still think there's a lot there. He runs a little bit, which for a catcher is a lot, kind of. And my favorite thing, he's going to play, which is always great. So I think for him to be going that late behind some of the young guns that we're seeing and things like that, no way in hell am I taking Travis d'Arnaud over Christian Vasquez, because Travis d'Arnaud doesn't play. I'm also not interested in Mitch Garver because he doesn't play. And I don't think Adley Rushman will do anything this year. So just looking at some of the guys going ahead of Christian Vasquez, totally don't understand it. The guy's going to play, and I think we'll see a rebound as far as just overall, getting on base, batting average. I think he's just going too late at 225.
I tend to target him, especially in 2 catcher leagues, because I don't know what it is. No one kind of respects the speed he brings, because anything below 10, people sometimes think of it as a 0, which is always a mistake. 5s add up. You know what I mean? Last year was definitely not his most impressive. 458 at bats, batted 258, only 6 home runs, 49 RBIs. So I can understand how people are just perusing. He doesn't look that fantastic, but yeah, he plays and he's in a decent offense and he steals some bags, which is, if Dalton Varsho can obviously steal a lot more. JT Realmuto is going to steal a lot more, but outside of that, there's not a lot you can do. So I love Vasquez, especially as a second catcher. Rob, what are your thoughts on Vasquez as an undervalued player in the American League?
Yeah, I can buy it. Of the Red Sox last 384 games, so their last 3 seasons, including the short season, he's played 323 of them, so 84% of games. There aren't a lot of catchers who do that. But let's be honest, the bad 210 hitters have had 500 plus plate appearances in 2020 plus 2021. Only 28 have fewer home runs than his 13 home runs. So my philosophy for catchers in 2 catcher 15 team leagues is find guys who will not kill you or spend nothing on them and stream catcher. Vasquez certainly qualifies as a guy who will not kill you. But as nice as those 5 stolen bases are, and they are, you need to adjust your team construct when you have a guy who you cannot count on serious power from, compared not just to most players, but to most catchers. So not killing you in batting average is nice. Getting those 4-5 steals, whatever pops up, is really nice. But you just have to be aware. If you had combined him and Mike Zunino last year, you would have gotten 109 runs, 108 RBIs, 38 home runs, 9 stolen bases, and a 240 batting average. That is basically 2 Wilson Contrerases. So if you think of it that way, where you combine him, who has a couple of strengths, a couple of weaknesses, Mike Zunino, who has one really big strength and one really big weakness, together, you got 2 Wilson Contrerases. 2 Wilson Contrerases at catcher, when you use like a 15th round pick and a whatever round pick, is great. I don't know that you should do that with Mike Zunino again this year, though. But it's just something that popped up for me. So I'm good with the pick.
Let's go to the Mike Zunino expert, Jason Collette. What do you think?
Boy.
How do you think of that idea? More importantly, your thoughts on Christian Vasquez.
No, I agree with Rob in that he is the perfect, he won't kill you type of guy. But all the other risks that were laid out with him is where it goes. I mean, catcher, I take the same type of approach. There have been years where I have taken 2 absolute stiffs and just streamed all year. There have been years where one year I spent for Joe Mauer and it worked out awful. It just did not play out. But Vasquez is kind of like my line of, okay, now I'm changing the strategy. If somebody jumps and wants to get Vasquez, I'm like, okay, I'm going to change things up. But I do like him as a very safe play, but not somebody that I'm targeting.
All right, and I guess no, we already got everyone's thoughts pretty much. There's nothing really else to talk about. Christian Vasquez,
he's great.
Yeah, he's he is what it is. There's a shelf if you don't want to wait on the Carson Kellys of the world. Like you said, he won't kill you, but you may want to consider the fact that you'll have to team him up with something for a little more production. To finish off the undervalued hitters, mine is Brandon Lau, who ironically Rob said to start us off here, how you can't be underrated as a Ray because a lot of them don't play enough, and Lau is not fantastic split hitter, but I don't think he's bad enough where he's ever going to miss significant time. He'll have the occasional day off. But I just love his price. Marcus Semien going very, very early, broke the league record for second base home runs. Goes to a non-fantastic park for where he's going to go. So the 45 home runs ain't going again. I think most projection system have him in the 30-ish range. I think that's fair. He could go over that. That's fine. But in the end, he's going to be around a 255, 260 hitter, 30 home runs. The counting stats will go way down in that poor lineup. And Brandon Lau, I think, is basically the same guy. I think he's someone people forget. He does steal some bases. Simeon could steal a little more going to the Rangers because they'll probably need him to. But overall, I think it'll be close enough. Again, most projections have him about 10 home runs. They have Lau at like 6. I think I can have him maybe even getting like 8. So it's just there's a whole bunch of guys though, like Polanco, India. There's a lot of second basemen in that kind of area that I like late, and Lau typically goes after all of them. So I just like Lau quite a bit because he hits the ball just about as hard as anyone. He's been on pace for the 40 home runs for the last couple of years, actually reached it last year. So the power is very legitimate. And he improved his contact in the second half. So I think there's a little bit of juice in the bat for maybe a little bit of a surprise in batting average. I wouldn't draft him expecting it, but it's not out of the realm of possibilities, in my opinion. So yeah, give me all the Brandon Lau at his price. What do you think, Jason?
I mean, he is, when I look at the ADP over the last couple of weeks, he's going about a round and a half in front of Javier Baez. Maybe it's the dual eligibility there for Baez. I don't buy it. I mean, the thing with Lau is that there are times when he gets into massive slumps. Like I think he had a 1 for 44 this year at one point. So when he slumps, he gets into massive slumps. But when he gets on a heater, he can really get on a heater. And he does have this trouble against lefties, and then some tough matchups. They will bench him, or they'll just hit him down in the lineup. So he moves around in that regard, but he does give the volume all over the place. It is weird because when you look at the home run totals and whatnot, he's not a big dude, but he hits balls. I mean, even the broadcast calls them helium balls because he just hits them and they just keep going up and they keep going up and they get out. So he can really backspin a baseball and get it out. And that's what's always been impressive about him. He's one of the guys that they locked up to a contract, so you don't have to worry about anything. He's very affordable to that regard, and he's a building piece around. But the batting average is really the only risk. But that gets mitigated by the fact that they will sit him against the tougher matchups and not roll him out there every single day. And that, I mean, you bring up Simeon. That's been one of the great things about Simeon is just the incredible volume of production that he's been providing you with 700 plus plate appearance seasons. That's tough to do year over year like he's done with that. And him running over to Texas on that with the new deal and whatnot. I have concerns about Simeon this year because of that.
What do you think, Rob? Not to bash Simeon. He has some things going against him, like he's not repeating what he did. No one expected that.
Mm-hmm.
But more we were talking about Brandon Lau. It's also price dependent for me. If he was going a little earlier, maybe I think differently. Again, there's a lot of second basemen I kind of like going in that range, and he happens to be going where I typically like to take him.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on Lau himself?
I like the player. There are other middle infielders that, from a team contract perspective, I like more who are going in that range. I'd rather Polanco, I'd rather India than him. But if you're just trying to grind out $2 little profits per pick, or in an auction, if you're just trying to, you have him as a $26 player and you get him for 24, and if you do that with enough guys, the categories can work themselves out. He was great last year, and I think a lot of it is repeatable. So I have no problem with that pick. I just don't think he's somebody who's going to be on any of my teams this year.
All right, and Brian, wrap us up with Brandon Lau before we get into a probably more contentious, overrated section of the show.
Yeah, the most interesting thing to me is with what a great year he had last year, his price is exactly the same pretty much as it was going into last year. So I find it intriguing. It shows me that enough people are concerned about the raise factor, I think, with him. But I'm kind of with you, Matt. Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't have any of them yet, weirdly enough. But yeah, I don't think there's much to be concerned about. It's not like he's going to get super platooned. Like Jason said, he's already signed to a great team contract. So I'm into it. I wouldn't have picked him as my underrated. I didn't, but I like it.
Yeah, I mean, this finally stemmed from I was at the turn in a draft, and I wanted a second baseman before the cliff fell off for me, and Baez was still there, Lau was there, India was there, Polanco was there, and Altuve was there, and I wanted Lau or India or Polanco, and all of them went except for Lau. So yeah, I happily took him, And yeah, I'll happily take whoever is the last of that group almost every time. So it happens to be Lau more often than not for me. But yeah, like Rob said, I love India. I love Polanco. I probably prefer them a lot too. But yeah, as far as we're talking about the American League East, and sticking with that, going over to overrated hitters, we have a lot more interesting ones here. Rob, hit us with your overrated hitter for the American League East.
Yeah, I tweeted about this guy this week, and I might as well have tweeted about like Middle East peace, abortion, and who the next president of the United States is
What do you
going to
mean?
be, because I would
Rob
have
hates
gotten a
puppies.
lot. I would have gotten a less heated reaction. My overrated player in the AL East, and he may be I think the most overrated player in drafts this year, is Wander Franco. And like there are 29 other teams who would love to have Wander Franco in real life, and Wander Franco at some point is going to be a fantasy star. So I'm not anti Wander Franco, despite some of the threats that came my way. He's it's risky taking a young guy who's like I have underwear older than Wander Franco. It's risky when you draft a guy like that, and it's even more risky when you're projecting growth the way you need to project him to become a fourth round value. I worry about the speed. I worry about the power. I don't worry so much about the batting average because he's obviously a very special hit tool player. So would it shock me if like the power comes and he hits 27 home runs this year? No, it wouldn't shock me. Would it shock me that he gets on base enough that he suddenly steals instead of tying Vlad Guerrero in stolen bases? Him and Vlad, from the day he got called up, as I tweeted, had the exact same number of stolen bases the rest of the way. Would it shock me that he gets on base enough and he's obviously athletic enough that he suddenly steals 12, 15 bases? It wouldn't be shocking. But he's going to be my second hitter in the fourth round, maybe my third hitter if I take a pitcher in the first round. I don't want to have to hope he grows. I don't want to have to, project things on him. I want to kind of have it in the bank. And there's just other than the hit tool, there isn't a lot in the bank in fantasy for Wander Franco this year. Very different from in real life, where he's obviously a spectacular generational player for Jason's team.
I have a hard time coming down on where I truly believe in Franco this year. I always end up saying I think his ADP is fair because I mean I believe in the batting average and the hit tool so much, and I think he'll be batting like right there at the top of the lineup. Where I think that there's a very good chance he comes close. He can. I know. I saw you. You're gonna laugh at me because I know you shot down someone earlier as they tried to backtrack from this, but I'm not going to. I haven't projected. This is what I expect. These aren't projections. These are by no means on the safe side. I'm batting 309 with 18 home runs, 102 runs, 92 RBIs, 9 stolen bases, which may be a little too much on the RBI side, but it's not egregious on the power and speed side, which I have him down for 18 and 9, which may not be enough, but he had the lowest strikeout rate in baseball after the trade deadline. And he is one of the most aggressive hitters in baseball too. He swings, but he hits everything too. He never batted below 313 in the minors, and by August, he was doing that in the major league level. So I think I believe in the batting average so much. I think he hits over 300 this year, and he's doing it at the top of a decent team. So I kind of feel the batting average there and the counting stats, and he'll have decent power and speed. I don't need him to take off, so I can see it. But you can kind of recreate that a little easier later, so I can see how he can be overrated too. But I love him, and I think he could take off here. The one thing that does scare me is the speed because 2018 he stole 4, caught 3 times. 2019, this is Wander Franco. Everyone, 18 stolen bases, caught 14 times. Last year, caught 7 steals, caught 5. They could take his green light away if he doesn't improve on that.
If I could just have one rebuttal before Jason jumps in to defend his spectacular beast of a young man. When Vlad Guerrero got called up, Steamer in his rookie year had Vlad hitting 300. Why? Because Vlad had hit 300 everywhere. He was going to lead baseball in batting average with 30 home runs, and it was just going to happen. And we all watched him take batting practice. We watched him in spring training, and it's like the Messiah has arrived. Like he is here. And 300 batting average. Like, you can't hit the ball as hard as Vlad hits the ball, and not hit with the contact skills, with everything, and not hit 300. And the projections in the minor league stats backed it up. And then he hit 270 with 15 home runs. But and then 2020 was coming, and it's like, okay, but it's going to fix itself. And he hit 262. These baseball's not linear. So, like, I even the batting average, as good as he is, and everything you said is true. Like, nothing, I can't disagree with anything, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way. So anyways, it's too, of course the upside is there, but it's too risky for me in the 4th round. I want more certainty than that. And he's not the kind of guy, it's hard to imagine him becoming a guy who's going like 30-30 this year. So you got to pounce, because that kind of upside is there this year.
I agree with that point. I don't think that, I think it's unreasonable to expect that. But Jason, rather than me ramble on, please take the floor.
All right, so I would say a couple of things. One, his swing has fewer holes in it than Rob's underwear does. Had to get that in there. But the other piece, I've been waiting for like 5 minutes to say that. I don't want to know, but his point, Rob's point about Vlad is an excellent one, and I'll fully admit, his first full season, Paul Sporer and I took Vlad Guerrero in the 4th round. In 15-team mixed labor, because we were all in, and that team did not perform well. That was just an example of, everything, the talent, and eventually that was a lesson learned. I would agree. I agree with Rob, the fact that he's being overdrafted right now. I'm not sure he hits 20 home runs this year. I'm pretty damn sure he's not going to steal 20 bases. That said, he could score the 100 runs. He's a good base runner, can take first to third like that. I mean, he's really good in that regard. And watching him play every day, he matured by leaps and bounds as the season went on. It was just so impressive to watch him. And let's not forget, he was 20 years old. People his age were playing A- ball, low A, whatever you want to call it. And he was in the major leagues and excelling at a point for that. And so long-term future, bright as all get out. But this year, I just feel like, as Rob said, this is like Vlad Guerrero in his first full season, where everybody believes the talent's going to hit the ground running. And you have to expect some struggles. That said, he's going to play just about every single day. And so he should get the volume and get the production. But when you look at the position, and Jonathan India would be a good example. You guys all mentioned that you loved him. If you were to statistically scout Jonathan India heading into last year, you would have been rather unimpressed. And in fact, I wrote Jonathan India up as somebody as a value in the scrap heap, because he was pretty much being completely overlooked. Because he had not done that well in the minors, and they weren't sure if he was going to play. Yeah, I ended up getting him in the reserves in a couple of drafts last year, and it worked out very well. It was one of the reasons why I was profitable last year. Look at the season he had coming off. The difference is Franco had the minor league track record, is not being overlooked. And as you said, if you want him, you got to take him in the 4th round. I believe I saw him go in the 2nd round in one of the Arizona Fall League drafts. I thought he went at the end of the 2nd in there. So it's like, even back then, as soon as the offseason to hit, boom. And I say that because I believe one of my friends who's in my local league did that. And I'm sure he's listening tomorrow. So sorry, I won't out him by name. But so, yeah, if you want him, you're going to have to get him in the 4th. But as somebody who did that in recent history, I don't want to do that again.
I think he's he's actually one of those players where this year it may be one of those things where maybe stay away in roto and points leagues. He probably can be a beast from the get go. That's its own separate thing. But to cap us off here, Brian, what are your thoughts on Wander? I'm pretty sure I know where you're leaning on this one, but go ahead and lay it on us.
I also saw Wander Franco go in the 2nd round in one of the DCs that I've done this season, actually, just a few weeks ago. So into the 2nd round before Freddie Freeman, just to give you a vibe. But, it's funny that you mentioned Jonathan India, Jason, because I think that's actually back about where Franco probably should be going right now, or like right around Bobby Witt, just to bring up the other young guy. That's kind of where I feel like he should be. I'm not going to be taking any of them or anything, but I agree with it. I mean, obviously generational talent, going to do all the things. I think the counting stats really could be there. Like you said, the runs and everything, great hitter, ability to get on base in a solid lineup. I do agree. 4th round is going to be too rich for me right now.
Just a question, because obviously, I mean, everyone heard what I am expecting from him, which wasn't crazy from a power speed perspective. I think the counting stats would be high. I gave him a 309 batting average. Maybe that's high. Drop it to 300 if you want, or as low as you think. But the one thing that keeps me thinking, or I don't see anyone arguing against the player I'm about to, other than track record. What's the huge difference between what I'm expecting and Xander Bogaerts? Because I think what I'm expecting isn't that crazy. I'm a little high on the average. I think I'm reasonable with the power and speed. He's basically a cheaper Xander Bogaerts, in my opinion. Understandably, people trust it because we've seen it. But I don't know. I guess I believe in the hit tool enough to believe that he's. I'm kind of expecting that. I'm kind of expecting him to be Xander Bogaerts this year.
Yeah, I think Xander has a bit more power. So
Well, a
I
little
think
bit. I think Wander maybe steals a couple more bags. He
still
steals
more
a
bases.
little more average.
When I'm flipping down my my spreadsheet, my ranking spreadsheet, I have Xander 4 spots ahead amongst hitters from Xander. So I think Xander's being overdrafted, frankly.
No, I think that is kind of the thing too.
So I don't know that I think that may be consciously or unconsciously an anti-Xander, who again I like the player argument as opposed to a pro Wander Franco
I
argument.
just think it's an interesting player. No one brings up when they're when comparing when talking about Wander. I just think Xander is an interesting player, especially as we're talking about the American League. So moving on to Jason, who is I disagree. I'm going to say that straight up front. Who's your overrated hitter in the American League East? We know Rob. I assume Rob does.
I assume Jason is trolling me here.
and I say this with all the love for the player. So I'll give you a backstory. And the player I'm going to bring up is Teoscar Hernandez. So I'll give you a backstory that has nothing to do with him being overrated. But yeah, when I lived in Orlando, I would go over to Astros camp, and so I left Orlando in 2014. So it was either 13 or 14. I go over there to meet up, say hi to Kevin Goldstein. He and I are walking the back fields together. And he's like, we're over there watching some BP and guys hitting over there, and it's like a sound. And he goes, "That's Teoscar Hernandez. Don't forget that name." And that was it was just kind of a drop comment. And then years later, here he is doing what he's doing. But that said, when I look at, so I love the player and I love what I've seen lately. But when I see where he's being drafted as one of the top 25 hitters. And you look at, he's got the second worst strikeout rate. The worst one's Shohei Ohtani, right? But that's where it gets weird. Is like, but he has the lowest projected batting average of the top 25 hitters. And I tweeted out a few days ago, even in advance of knowing we were going to talk about this, about how he and Tyler O'Neill, the aforementioned bodybuilder, are very similar in their profile, and yet they're going 2 rounds apart. I mean, they have the same contact concerns. Hernandez actually chases more than O'Neill does with that, but they have same kind of. They both hit the snot out of the baseball. They're both very aggressive, but Hernandez expands his zone even more. So if I'm going to take on a profile that has risk, and we've seen that risk from both players in recent years, I'm going to wait and take O'Neill versus jumping in to early in the 3rd round to take Teoscar Hernandez.
What do you think, Rob? But by the way, Teoscar, I think his minimum pick in drafts is 12. Very isolated incident, but I would love to meet the person who did that and interview them and ask what they're expecting this season. Rob, what are your thoughts on
it? It was
Saab
Rover. He took him.
People don't realize Teoscar Hernandez's mom plays in the NFBC now. I think that's that's right. Look, he's done what he's done in the last 2 years. So yeah, you're paying for Teoscar Hernandez. There just aren't that many hitters who can give you 30, 10 to 60. And while I would never say that's anybody's floor, because stuff happens in a baseball season, that's a pretty conservative line given what Teoscar has done the last few years. I think if I said which of those 3 numbers, 30, 10, 260, is in greatest risk, I actually don't think it's the batting average. I think Teoscar stopping running is the biggest risk. I think he's fast enough and a good enough athlete, and the Jays are playing weirdly and aggressive enough, I guess beyond Bo Bichette, an aggressive enough brand of baseball that I think he can kind of over 6 healthy months find his 10 stolen bases, but it wouldn't shock me if at the end of the season he had 6 or 7 stolen bases. So my projection for him right now, just to be clear, is 10 stolen bases. So I don't think there's anything wrong with putting that in ink, but I think that's more risk than the batting average. I think 300 is with his strikeout rate is tough for him, but like it's down below 25%. It was 24.9% last year. He's improving in terms of contact rate. I think there's a real chance we haven't seen the best season yet for Teoscar Hernandez. I think the Jays, if they don't lock him up long term in the week and a half in between a deal and spring training starting, I think they may really, really regret it, because I think he's going to get really expensive because he's a very good hitter. The only reason he may not get that expensive is he's also a terrible outfielder. But I love Teoscar Hernandez for fantasy this year, so I disagree with Jason.
Yeah, I love Teoscar Hernandez. I love Tyler O'Neill. I think Tyler O'Neill succeeded for the same reason Teoscar does. You were mentioning like the swing and miss, but they're very aggressive. I think they're covering up their own holes by actually magnifying their strength. Like they have those high BABIP skills, hitting the ball hard, line drives, incredible sprint speed. And if you have the high BABIP skill, you're better to, put balls in play. You want batted ball events. And I think that, that's why Teoscar can maintain that high average. And I think that's why I believe Tyler O'Neill can maintain a higher average. A lot of people are expecting that to sink, but obviously we've only seen that one season from him. So, we don't know if he can. We know Teoscar can. So I think it's worth the extra price because he's proven that this is a formula he can work with. Whereas Tyler O'Neill, we're kind of like hoping he can. I'm on board with O'Neill, but I understand what Jason was saying, but don't give me either. I like them both. Give me them both.
I would just say, I would also, it's not like I hate the guy, but let's get, if he were to fall, like, I don't want to take him early in the third round. But if he's sliding down there, if he somehow he makes it, like when we look at his min, he's fallen down as low as he's been 25 to 38. So there's been very little flexibility on that. So he's not making it out of the third round. But O'Neill has gone as low as 60. And if I can see him sitting there waiting and I can grab, I'm there. But in the 2 drafts that I've done, both times I've passed on Hernandez and let somebody else take him. But if he were to slide, I'd take him. I love everybody at a certain price. I just don't like him in his current one.
This is like, it's a bit like saying, look, I'd love to be driving a Porsche. All I need is the Porsche to come down to the Hyundai price, and then look, I'm in on the Porsche. Like Teoscar Hernandez finished as the 8th best player in baseball last year on the Razzball player rater.
Mm-hmm.
There's an argument if you go stat by stat through last year, which is not the way you should project baseball players, but if you go stat by stat through Teoscar's year last year and said, "Yep, that's legit, that's legit, that's legit, that's legit, that's legit," he's a first round player. So I hear what Jason's saying, and the O'Neill comp is an interesting comp. The right answer, maybe you should draft both of them. Like why is this an either or question? I like them both, but yeah, the market's smart. They are paying in the third round for a guy who has legit first round potential because he did it last year.
Instead of skipping Teoscar and going to O'Neill's, skip Bryce Harper and go to Teoscar. That's the lesson here, everybody.
Push him up to the first round.
I in the third round, early in the third, I took Yordan Alvarez over Teoscar Hernandez. That's where I am.
I will never besmirch a Yordan pick, so I just won't do it. It has nothing to do with Teoscar. Yordan is good.
That's where I was. I had the opportunity, went with the other guy because Yordan literally, I think, is the only guy who could flatten the baseball this year the way he was hitting last year.
Ryan, you want to jump in here on the Teoscar Hernandez as Jason's calling him overrated?
I'll say what nobody else has the courage to say. Clear homerism on the part of Rob Silver here in this debate, I will say. But no, all joking aside, Teoscar, I kind of agree with Jason a little bit. I mean, I don't. Here's my one question. I think he's somewhat appropriately priced. I wouldn't find myself taking him there, I don't think, in the third round very often, just because
you hate Tyler O'Neill too. So
yeah, exactly. But in the third round and taking an outfielder there. And also, I like what Rob said about like the fact that some of the speed could go away. What do you guys think? Where do you think he would be going? I think this is kind of interesting. Let's say he was just projected for 5 stolen bases for whatever reason. I think that would like somewhat massively change his price, because people see 10 there and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, he's a power and speed guy. But if he was only projected for 5, I think he might be going quite a bit later than he is right
I
now.
think like 3,
Then he
4
goes in
turn, maybe
Eloy.
Randy or
Then he goes
Rosarina,
in
maybe
Eloy
around
range.
there. What'd you say?
I said, then he goes in Eloy range possibly if he's losing half his steals, or
I said
still
Randy.
too low?
I said a Rosarina. I guess that depends. I just
I
have him
think
at the. I think
I
you go 3, 4 turn.
I think I think he's then in the conversation with Aaron Judge, who we may be talking about next.
Yeah.
That's a segue. But look, if my grandmother had wheels, she'd be a bus. He is a legit 10 stolen base guy.
The analogy king.
Yeah. I don't know if that's I don't know if that analogy gets me the analogy crown, Jason, but I'll take it.
Brian, we're moving on from Teoscar Hernandez. Who's your overrated hitter for the American League East?
This was the easiest choice I had to make, and I think any player on any of these shows we've done yet. Aaron Judge. He doesn't play. I know last year he played 148 games. That was an anomaly. The COVID shortened season, he played 28, 102 the year before that, 112 the year before that. You have to go back to 2017 where he played 155 last. He's one-dimensional. It's really just power. With I will say a solid average. I mean, he will not hurt you in the average category, especially in today's batted ball climate and everything. But it's like people just forget the history. I just don't understand it. And if people want to take him there, be my guest. That's perfectly fine. But to just look at this guy, and I think it's also because of the bulkiness, how big he is, and playing in the field and stuff like that. I mean, I could be talking about any Yankee really right here because the whole lineup is like this. But I mean, where is he going? 39 in the last 10 DC drafts right now. I just think that that's preposterous. There's no way I'm taking a guy like that there that never is capable of staying on the field. He's too one-dimensional. I just, no, I don't like anything about it. He's totally crossed off my board. I probably wouldn't take him in the first 6 rounds. I'm just not at all interested in Aaron Judge. I don't understand why it continues. I really don't understand how people can just fall right back into this trap. Willing to be wrong. If he accidentally plays 148 again this year, okay. But I would peg him more for 115 or something like that. So
does it change your opinion if I told you he's been doing yoga all winter to stay limber and healthy this year?
While I am familiar with the benefits of yoga, and I feel that it creates
yoga? That's the question.
Well, it creates a sound body and mind. I'm just still not going to invest at that price, but I'm encouraged it slightly, Rob. Yeah.
Third or fourth time we've mentioned Vlad Sedler, Matt Modica, and Scott Jenstead and I have a thread that we talk baseball on, and we make a lot of fun of Aaron Judge doing yoga and Pilates and different things to stay healthy through the baseball season. That was the joke I was making with you. Is of course him doing yoga should not change how you evaluate Aaron Judge.
There are many benefits to yoga. I'm not going to deny that.
This is not an anti-yoga comment. I am simply pointing out that a professional athlete has decided to start stretching his body is probably a good thing, but it should not change your opinion about said athlete, I would argue.
You're only injury prone until you're not. I mean, 678 plate appearances, then 498, 447, then the 2020 was crap, and then 633 last year. You say he's one-dimensional, but that's only if you add in the injuries. He's not one-dimensional. People throw that around a lot. He's a one-category player. I mean, he gives you a decent average. He gives you power. He gives you runs. He gives you RBIs. That's like 4 out of 5 categories. So I think that's thrown around a little bit for some players. I think the average, especially with how he improved his contact down the stretch, is discounted. That being said, I've been playing baseball for years and years and years and years, fantasy baseball. I have 1 share. And I just got it. And I took him at his max pick just because I'm like, hey, I don't have a share of this. And it was in the Battle of the Podcast draft. It's like a $50 league. I figured, whatever. I'll root for Aaron Judge this year. But I understand if he's being taken at cost, how this can be a little much. And Rob already brought up Trey Mancini as a power option that you can get that batting average with. I think Judge is another one, but he's obviously being taken significantly earlier. I think the health thing is a little overblown, but I do agree that he's being taken a tad early for me. Like I said, I have 1 share and it happened to be like 10 picks past his max. So I'm a hypocrite for defending him, maybe, but I think I might be the only one doing it. So, Jason, I don't know if you want to jump in here. I might be the only one saying kind words about Aaron Judge.
Like you said, at the end of the day last year, he was still very. It helped you out quite a bit in 4 categories. But we also have a guy who's stayed on the field, has had 2 healthy seasons and 2 seasons where the health has not been there with him. And so that's always the risk. But when you have, he has to, what he did last year is what he has to repeat in order to justify where he's been taken. That's the level of production that has to happen for that, because he just doesn't run that much. He had 6 steals last year, and maybe yoga boost him up a little bit more. But the 2017 season was so much fun because he was 52 home runs, 100 and something RBIs, 100 and something runs. He had all that level of production. But this is where if he doesn't repeat what he did last year, it's just tough to maintain where he's tough to justify where he's currently being taken. But as Rob opened up with his introduction, when he said that, we're in a division where 2 teams, guys tend to get overvalued because of the fan base playing in this sport we have. And this is a prime example. He's still going in the top 15 with all of his risk that he has shown in recent years around his success.
Sorry, Jason. I think if you simulated the 2022 season a million times, him and Giancarlo Stanton have roughly the same number of fully healthy seasons. So play, let's say, 155 games at the same time. And I think the difference between an Aaron Judge 155 game season and a Giancarlo Stanton 155 game season are flip coins. Like, they're roughly the same guy. Maybe Aaron Judge's batting average is a bit better, but they're roughly, from a fantasy perspective, the same guy. And I don't think at this point one is more injury prone than the other. So I think the projections like Judge more than Stanton on a per plate appearance and have him projected for more. But if I really want, and I don't really want either of them, but if I really wanted one, I'll take the cheaper guy. If I think I need this upside of a 50 home run season. And again, if you simulated 2022 a million times, both of them hit 50 home runs in a chunk of those games. They're one of the few players in baseball who have that in them to do that. We know what a monster season could look like for Aaron Judge because we've seen it. We know what a monster Giancarlo Stanton season could look like. So if I really had to, in my own mind, have a Yankee stud slugger, give me the cheaper guy in Giancarlo Stanton with all the same risk, I think. But I wouldn't take either of them, I don't think, this year.
All right, and the last guy that I'll bring up for overvalued hitter, we don't have to spend any time on. It's just Joey Gallo. He's not going incredibly early. It's just a public service announcement for everyone that forgets that there are on-base percentage leagues and there are batting average leagues. Take him in on-base percentage leagues. He's a gold mine. People forget. In a batting average leagues, just don't do it. There's so many other avenues, just countless other avenues. Take Bobby Dalbec, take anyone. There's so many people you can take for power. Yeah, you can hit 50 home runs, but that like 240, 250 average is never coming back. 280, 210, 200, that's his range. That's where he lives. That's his wheelhouse. So Joey Gallo, just say no for me. Does anyone else here disagree? Is anyone else? I don't know, Jason. You look like you're about to disagree with me.
No, I don't. I have like a one question. Is there any other player except Rob? Don't steal my answer from the last segment. From the last guy we're going to talk about. Is there any other player that you have to adjust your roster construction for any more than Gallo? Like, if you really want to take the dart at the 40 home runs, it's like, do you have to take 2 different players to offset what he could tank on your average? Is there any other player that you could look at and say, it's worth taking him, and it forces me, even if it forces me to go this direction with some other picks?
No.
Yeah,
I don't think there's a baseball equivalent.
There's like they're catchers. They're Mike Zunino. There's like those kinds of guys who just drain your batting average to such extent.
Yeah.
They give you a nice little power boost. But yeah, you take Wander Franco, and all the advantage you just got from Wander Franco is gone when you take Joey Gallo.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you draft DeAndre Jordan and Andre Drummond. I used to play fantasy basketball. Those guys can't hit free throws. If you draft one of them, you might as well just draft both because you're finishing last in a free throw percentage. So that's my comparison.
I think you just lost half the audience with the basket.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
So Joey Gallo, Bobby Dahlbeck, Mike Zunino. There's my core power right there in my AL only league. Boom, got it.
there you go.
All right, so we're moving over to undervalued pitchers. Rob, love your pick here. Who is your undervalued pitcher for the American?
Mr. Nathan Eovaldi. There were only four starting pitchers. Sorry, my dog is a big Nate Eovaldi fan. He's barking in the background. Who had 25% or higher strikeout rate, 6% or lower walk rate, and less than 1 home run per 9. Burns, Wheeler, Urias, and Nate Eovaldi. His fastball velocity was down in the second half. Should you be concerned? Maybe. But given where he's going, he's a pitcher with 5 pitches. He uses 10% or more with 10% or higher swing and strike rate. There are not a lot of guys with that kind of an arsenal. So I really like Nate Eovaldi as an SP2 that you can get relatively cheap, or an SP3.
Yeah, he was my pick as well. So we'll save a little bit of time here. I think that his health issues are a little overblown, because I think that is more than baked into his draft price. So if you can get him where he's going, absolutely, you can grab him as your SP3, real solid, and the risk isn't there. Where if he somehow does miss time, it's not a killer. So yeah, I love Eovaldi for all the reasons you said. Thoughts, Jason, on Nate Eovaldi?
I do not have a bad word to say about the pitcher, even though he plays for the team that I really do not like. I had not a bad word to say about Eovaldi. It's been awesome to see how he has come back from fully recovered from a second Tommy John surgery, and kind of blazed the trail for other pitchers doing the same type of thing. Kind of like, hopefully Ken Giles can find the same kind of success in Seattle, but Eovaldi, how he has turned into a guy we thought maybe he could come back as a reliever as this, and how he is flourishing as a starter. He's a guy that I would be targeting on my rosters. Just really enjoy him, watching him pitch the way he pitches, and the consistency that he has on fantasy rosters.
All right. Are you going to 4 for 4? Or are you going to betray us, Brian?
I'm not going to totally betray you. No, it is truly amazing. I just go like a semi-betrayal. But yeah, what he's become is certainly amazing, especially like you said, after 2 Tommy John surgeries. To be able to be doing this right now, I don't even have words for it. It's insane. I mean, there is an extensive injury history, and Matt, maybe you're right that it's a little bit overblown. And I do think it is kind of baked into the price. The last 10 DCs, he is going 116th. That's pretty late. I mean, for, the talent level that he is observing now. So I would say there's reason to be cautiously optimistic. I don't have any shares yet. I just don't feel quite as strongly, I guess you would say. So sorry for the betrayal.
I guess I say this a lot. I think there's something to be said that people don't give enough credit for players with past injuries going through an entire season unscathed. I think that's, they've proved something. They've gone through an entire season. Jorge Soler couldn't stay healthy. Then he played 162 games. It just, sometimes you just somehow put it behind you, but it doesn't happen a lot. But I think that's just something people discount too much. So that's Nate Eovaldi. Jason, who is your underrated pitcher from the list? You got someone here I think a lot of people are interested in, but his ADP never seems to move. It's always weird.
It is weird. I have Jordan Montgomery, and he's like 85th on the pitcher board by ADP. And the weird thing about him, Rob, I don't know if you see it. It kind of reminds me of Jimmy Key, and maybe I saw Jimmy Key pitch as a teenager, where you saw him pitch as an elementary school kid, because I'm the one turning 50 this year. But it reminds me of Jimmy Key, because with Montgomery, he pitches backwards. Like his 2 most frequently used pitches last year were his curveball and his changeup. Then he brought his sinker, which was terrible. I mean, the sinker just performed terribly. But he does throw 5 pitches, and he throws them all against righties and lefties. What really hurt him last year, made 30 starts, 6 wins. He had 17 no decisions because he had some of the worst run support in baseball. It's kind of weird talking about bad run support in the Yankees, but if you're a Yankees fan, you know what that feels like, because I see a bitch about it on Twitter all the time. But he had 7. Montgomery had 3.2 run support in the games he pitched. In the innings that he was in that game, they had 3.2 runs of support. And so he led the league with 17 no decisions. That's just dumb luck. I'm sorry. He's a better pitcher than this. And really what personified it, if you had him last year like I did, and I was trying to chase 2 different AL titles, and I had him in both leagues, he had What do you have? In 6 of his last 8 starts, he allowed 0 or 1 earned runs, and he had 2 wins to show for that. 2 wins and 6 starts with 0 or 1 earned runs. It's just dumb luck. I don't expect that to continue. I was high on Montgomery coming into last year. His ADP is not moving in my book. I want him again this year because he is a good pitcher. And you watch him pitch, you can see how he doesn't have the blazing velocity everybody else does, but he knows how to pitch. He knows how to add. He knows how to subtract. Like I said, Jimmy Key. And he's got to get better run support. There's no way. I mean, like if he could have had the run support Steven Matz had last year, where he was getting 7.5 runs per game and picking up all the wins Matz had, Montgomery would have been awesome last year.
I should say when I said the ADP didn't move, I meant that as a good thing. I meant that, well, not a good thing. He seems to be a sleeper, whatever that term means. People hate the term now. It seems bad, but people are keying on him. He doesn't seem to be being drafted really early, which is good for everyone who is in on him. Yeah, like 4 straight years with a well above league average swinging strike rate, well better than league average in zone contact rate for a pitcher and chase rate. So, I mean, yeah, everything looks like he should be breaking out at any time, but just hasn't quite happened yet. But yeah, he's definitely better than what he looked like on paper. Rob, are you a fan of Jordan Montgomery?
I am. I have not a single bad word to say about Jordan Montgomery or Jimmy Key. My only thing when I think through kind of a draft strategy is there's a lot of starting pitchers going in that range in the kind of 2-3 rounds plus or minus Montgomery that I really like. And by the time I'm unlike some people, I don't do a lot of drafts in November or December or January. I gear up for March. And by March, I'll have clarity on who the real targets are. It's not just let the room decide, like it's who do I want to go? Because those are important pitchers. Those are not just let's fill out the roster and go grab a couple of beers types of rounds, as everybody listening to this knows. And my gut is there are a few guys that I like a little bit more, but boy, I like Montgomery, and it's weird that a Yankee pitcher doesn't have more helium because there is all the things Jason said are bang on and are good reasons. So we'll see come draft season, like real draft season, whether the New York buzz picks up. But my guess is it's not. Like I think he disappointed enough people last year that he'll stay roughly the same. Disappointed people last year.
He's going right now around 200, which at that point in drafts, especially with the difference between min and max and the people in your draft, what is that information really worth? But as far as an average, he's going, like Rob said, around an area with very interesting pitchers, sleepers, and just veterans that are worthy. Tanner Houck's going right there. Patrick Sandoval, people love. Right, John Means is going right after there. Alex
Michael
Wood,
Kopech.
everyone's like Giants. Tristan McKenzie's been really trendy this offseason. So there's a lot of interesting names.
Yeah,
a lot of interesting names.
It's you need to prioritize. And my experience doing drafts is if you don't have clarity, if you're ambivalent going into drafts, that's where you get into trouble. Or if you're just like, wow, he felt 12 spots, it must be there for a good pick because it's after ADP. It's like, no, don't do that. Have as much clarity in your own, even if you're wrong, at least do your work, come up with your list and go in and get your guy, especially at that point in the draft. So that's free advice worth what you're paying for it.
All right, Brian, Jordan Montgomery, are you do you like him in that big group we talked about? Are you singling him out in that group?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I actually like Jason. I was all in on Montgomery last year. I think he may have been my highest rostered pitcher in 2021, actually. So enjoy watching him pitch. A great time, being able to mix the pitches like that, not just rely on a fastball. So I had him everywhere. The 6 wins, I didn't even realize it was that bad. That is insane. But yeah, we were talking about Brandon Lau earlier, who had a great season last year, and ADP didn't move. Montgomery had a very solid season last year, minus the wins, obviously. But as far as actual pitching, very good year, still going at the same price. So I'm a fan of him. Rob hit the nail on the head. You guys already named them all. This is like the space for pitchers. This is where the guys that you think are going to take this huge leap up, like a Pablo Sandoval, Yeah.
Pablo
Patrick
Sandoval.
Sandoval.
You're
He could take a
you're
leap up there.
three-dimension chest if you're picking Pablo Sandoval as a pitcher this year.
Yes.
You're playing a different level from the rest of us.
It's a whole other ball game. But yeah, and then the other thing, some solid veterans as well. I think there's more upside with Montgomery than those guys, the veterans anyway. But yeah, this is an intriguing area for pitchers, but totally agree. I think Montgomery should be going higher. I am a fan.
I mentioned my undervalued pitcher was Nate Eovaldi. So Brian, that just leaves us. Who's your underrated pitcher for the American League East?
So we're staying right in that same range. We were talking about some of those boring veterans, and Hyunjin Ryu is actually going to be mine, who's just going, at the moment anyway, slightly after Montgomery. And the reason that I like Ryu too is, on paper, and you're thinking about it and everything, even myself, the ballpark that he pitches in, being kind of a crafty lefty at this point, average fastball velocity is just around 90. He's still a very good pitcher, and it seems scary in that division, in that ballpark, to rely on somebody like that. But especially for the drafts that I'm doing right now, and draft champions being something that everybody is doing right now, really, if you're drafting, volume is a big thing. And I think this guy is still going to go out there and turn in, 160, 175 innings. And that's not something that you're going to find too often back in this territory. You've got your Adam Wainwrights, but we're talking about the AL East right now. So yeah, I still like Ryu. I mean, age-wise, we're going into his age 35 season. All these things, like just hearing them in a vacuum, would scare the hell out of me to draft a guy like this. But we are talking about the 200 price point here, and the kind of pitcher he is, and the durability that he's shown now, 3 straight seasons. Obviously, there was a COVID-shortened season, but a lot of starts in every single one. I think he's a solid value here. I mean, this isn't like, it's not like he's being criminally underdrafted or anything, but I think this is a really solid place to get some okay ratios and probably a lot of wins too, being on a good offensive team of the Blue Jays. So yeah, I'm a fan of Ryu at this price.
What do you think, Rob? Is the you would maybe have a little more insight here? Is the Blue Jays guy? Are you in on Ryu, especially in this area we just talked about, where you really got to pick a spot for your starting pitching?
Yeah, he's a guy. It's going to depend in part, assuming there is a spring training, how he's looking in spring training. So last 2 years, games where Ryu was throwing 90 or faster average fastball velocity, his ERA is 3.32. Sub 90, it's 4.69, and correlation is not causation, but he really needs to be over 90. And he got worn down last year. He was great at parts of the season and not so great. He was battling through injuries. He was having struggles getting later into games. To quibble a little bit, I think the Blue Jays are going to protect him a little bit. I think they're going to use a 6 starter a lot of the time through the rotation. I think they're going to skip him through the rotation. I think they want him to make it 6 months. And now with Berrios and Gaussman and Manoah there, as long as everybody stays healthy, there's enough length to that rotation now that, going into last year, they were really leaning on Hyunjin Ryu as their ace. Mm-hmm. He's their 4th starter now. And we all know this. Once the season starts, what does it mean to be an ace versus a 4th starter? Yet we also all know, because we watch baseball, that it actually does mean something. It's a lot easier to skip your 4th starter than it is your 1st starter when you're coming back at home. So I think on a per inning basis, Ryu's going to have a really nice bounce back. I don't know that the volume is there. And for a guy whose strikeout rate is not an elite strikeout rate, you're not, as you said, you're drafting him because you want the ratio protection, not the per inning strikeout numbers. I don't know that. I think he's a fine buy here, but I don't know that there's top 100 player upside here because of the strikeouts and because the innings aren't there. Whereas there are other guys going in this range, like Montgomery. If everything clicks for Montgomery, he could be a top 100, top 120 player. He could also be a 0 player. Ryu is the range is somewhere kind of narrower, a lot lower ceiling, maybe higher floor. So that depends kind of what you're looking for and who you have on your team as you're building a pitching staff. When you get to this part of the draft, do you need a potential home run or do you need just a solid guy? And I think Ryu is a solid guy. So I don't disagree. I just think there's a lot going on with Ryu going into this season.
All right, yeah, and we're talking about Hyunjin Ryu, and a lot of some people, especially last year, and not saying casual people, some people just don't dive into a lot of the data. The sticky ball, the June 21st deadline, that always throws people off. Just so I always throw this in, especially for the people that are worried about guys for like Ryu from the Dodgeritis, and if anything is wearing down. Spin rate did nothing but go up as the season went on. So did his velocity. Actually continued to rise as the season went on. So there's no concerns there. Jason, your thoughts on Hyunjin Ryu?
Yeah, I took him as an SP5 in my DC 50 is where I ended up getting him. So I like the point. I would say about the 160 to 175. To me, that's the new 190 to 200 innings. We're just going to see so. Because I hear a lot of people talk this winter about, oh, this guy's a 200 innings pitcher. At the end of the day, we may have 5 guys that make the 200 inning, maybe 5. And so what I'm trying to think, it's like 170. Anything projecting above that, I'm getting greedy. That's just how I'm looking at it now. So starting pitchers are somewhere between 140 and 170. As Rob said, it's like, the SP1 170, and then kind of work your way down from there. But I've seen some people, like even with Verlander, at 200 innings, and I want to make some kind of challenge bet on that. But regardless, I mean, with Ryu, again, I took him on the roster because I do like where he's in that Montgomery grouping, where I like the current price and the volume that he could give. Maybe he's the guy. I mean, now I won't even say maybe, because I mentioned Steven Matz with a 7.5 runs of support per game. Ryu was next with 6.6. So he had the run support last year, and we saw what happened. So if he loses some of that, perhaps some of those wins come down. But I would argue Toronto has a better overall roster on paper right now, and could even add to that to become a better offense for that, and Ryu won't have to pitch. When you looked at where some of his damage was last year, it was in the minor league parks, and it was in Camden Yards, which is now changed. And so he's in a better situation overall pitching. And so I think that mitigates any of those risks. So I'd like him as a late round guy this year. And I hope to have him on more than just the one team I have him so far.
All right, moving into now our overrated. And that was we were talking about Hyunjin Ryu there. Now we're moving into the group's overrated pitchers from the American League East, and we're going to stay directly in this area with Ryu and Montgomery, as Rob has his overrated pitcher for the American League East in this same exact area of the draft.
My overrated pitcher is John Means, and I know there are these Means men out there. The Boyd boys have moved on to the Means men now, but I don't see it. His last 189 innings.
The wall is 600 feet now in Baltimore. I mean, that's got to help.
Come on, John Means business. Come on, Rob.
It will not hurt him. Because in his last 189 innings, he's given up 42 home runs. He has a home run rate of 1.99 home run per 9 in 2020 plus 2021.
That's bad, by the way, everybody.
Only 6 starting pitchers have ever gone over 2 home runs per 9. Number 1, the aforementioned Matthew Boyd, Jose Lima in 2000, Dylan Bundy in 2018 in Baltimore, Sid Fernandez in Baltimore in 1994. Jason, do you have any memory of Sid Fernandez being a Baltimore Oriole? Because I do not.
He looked like a giant orange.
There you go.
In the orange uniform. Looked like a giant orange. But yes, I actually do remember him.
I feel a little bit of ageism
because I went to a game there in 1994.
There you go.
I feel some ageism on this podcast. I feel like these guys are, like we don't know these older players. This is
I'm not even brought in on the Sid Fernandez conversation.
But Sid Fernandez when he was with Baltimore. Anyways, Bronson Arroyo, Jim DeShays in 1994. Those are the only ones who have given up 2 home runs per 9. Obviously, the fence is going to help him. That's not my only argument, though it's certainly an argument. You can't just wave away that kind of a home run problem that he clearly has. So there's that. 2, he projects for a 21.1% strikeout rate, 21.9% by Steamer. League average is 22.6 for starting pitchers. So he's below average, maybe just below average, but he's a below average strikeout pitcher. We don't chase wins in fantasy because we're all smart, sophisticated fantasy guys. Baltimore is still going to be absolutely atrocious this year. They are still a 100-loss team, and they can move their fence to like Virginia. It doesn't matter. They are still a bad team, and wins are a category. And as we saw with Montgomery, if you're winning 6-7 games, your ERA can be plenty good. You ain't making a lot of fantasy dollars. So you combine a mediocre strikeout rate and mediocre wins and an ERA that I just don't trust because of the home run rate, and a very good control. So his whip is going to be very good. And I acknowledge his ERA could, because ERA is such a noisy stat. His ERA could be very good. That you put it all together, and there are so many starting pitchers that I can go beyond the glump we've talked about much later that I think have so much more upside, so much more interesting to me. What Means has is he puts together a heck of a GIF or GIF, depending on your personality. He is Marcus Stroman-esque in terms of, if all you did is watch baseball Twitter and that's all you knew about pitching, you would swear this guy is making a run after Nolan Ryan's strikeout record. But it's not quite connected between the real sexy GIFs and actual strikeout rates. So altogether, I don't hate John Means. I think it is possible John Means is a perfectly adequate fantasy player, pitcher this year. But there is so much hype and so much love for a guy that I don't see it there. So that's my overrated pitcher.
Jason, we're talking about John Means here. Jason, what are your thoughts? Because I mean, he got off to the good start. He had the lucky no-hitter, I'll call it. Maybe not the cleanest no-hitter in the world, but he was off to a really good start, and then he gets injured, comes back. Whatever the reason, spin right velocity, not quite the same, and he kind of ekes into the end of the season, not quite the pitcher he was at the beginning. So what are you expecting from him this year?
Yeah, and I mentioned Derek Carty's thread earlier. He pulled up the projections of what the bat has for Means with the change in park. I believe it dropped his ERA from like his projected area from 4.77 to 4.54, something along those lines. But that's what we're talking about. And like Rob said, I don't dislike John Means. I just like John Means because he pitches in Baltimore. It is still a bad bullpen. Maybe Tyler Wells can save some games, but they have to get to Tyler Wells, and they can't use Sean Armstrong every game. It's like they got to bridge that gap, and so that's where it really comes to risk. So he could get his strikeouts. He may have the ratios, but the defense is not that great either. And so I just don't like where he pitches. If he were to get traded, if Baltimore was like, fine, we're in this rebuild. By the time we're going to be good, Means may not be. So let's try to sell him now and try to get a haul for him. His value could go way up pitching somewhere else, pitching with a better support system around him. But I just can't get on board just because the fence has changed. It has not really moved the needle at all for me, for him, because again, it gets back to what I was talking about earlier. Maybe he gives up a fewer home runs, but the batting average, some of those singles, the doubles and triples, all that kind of stuff, the offense is still in play. And at the end of the day, the projections really haven't moved much on him. And my opinion has changed very little.
In 2020, I was really excited about him coming out of 2020 into 2021 because his fastball seemed a lot better. And we all know how good his changeup is. His fastball went back to not being as great last year on a whole, but his changeup is just phenomenal. I mean, I don't want to say he belongs in the bullpen. He doesn't, but he needs to lean harder onto that pitch. It's so good. Plenty of other pitchers just lean on a changeup in the past, and his is that good where compared to the rest of his arsenal, I think he does need to lean on it a little more. I don't know, what do you think, Brian? Are you buying in? Do you think that there's another gear for John Means here? We saw what he looked like in the beginning of the year. It looked like he maybe outkicked his coverage a little bit. But I mean, I see the tools here for him to be better. But it would have to be kind of a little bit of a drastic alteration of his arsenal as we've seen it so far for it to happen.
Yeah, I think all of us watched that no-hitter, it seemed like, because it was, if I recall, it was in April, and it was so early in the season, and I feel like everybody was tuned into that at the time. And the first of, like, what, 8 of them, I think, that happened last year. But no, I pretty much agree with the means assessment here. I mean, obviously, I think the ballpark change can help a little wee bit, but yeah, still on a terrible team. You know, his ERA actually outperformed his peripherals, like, big time last year. I did have a lot of them last year and was expecting a lot more than we got. I'm not really buying into it. I agree with all these points, and I agree. I think there's even some names. He's going about 225 in the last 10 drafts, 218. There's some intriguing names going after him that, for the volume and what I think the upside is that they offer, I would rather have. So I agree with pretty much everything that's been said. I don't think I'll be in on Means this year.
All right, now on to that's Rob's pick for overrated pitcher in the American League East, John Means. Going over to Jason, who continues to antagonize Rob with his picks. Who's your overrated pitcher in the American League East?
Kevin Gausman is my overrated pitcher, and this is why. I have this like nightmare for him, dream. I don't know what you want to call it. Like if going back to great movies in Airplane, when Ted Stryker gets in the pilot's chair of the plane and starts having Vietnam flashbacks when he's trying to land the crashing plane. It's like, I fear Gausman's going to get back in the AL East, maybe take a step on the mound and go, oh my God, I'm back here. Why did I come back to this house of horrors and the problems he had? I mean, when you look at him, he's still he's essentially the same pitcher in that fastball splitter type of thing. Where he got, the guy that left Baltimore. San Francisco does this amazing work where they take people's discards and turn them into and help them find success. So he's found success, and now he's cashed in and gone to Toronto. But he's coming, for me, he's coming off a season with his lowest ever home run to fly ball ratio in his career. He's about a 14 to 15% guy. He was 12% last year. If you look at the 3-year rolling park factors, San Francisco was the best park for pitching and hiding your home runs. And he's moving to a park that's the 6th worst over the last 3 years. And in the division where he has struggled, where he's had previous issues. So for me, I'm just concerned that we're bringing him back to a place where he's had failure and removing him from where he's had a success. And people are just like taking that success that he had last year and moving him straight over to Toronto and be like, he's great. And I'm just concerned that he won't be great. He's a 25th pitcher off the board by ADP, and I'm not there.
Before I turn this over to Rob, I think I'm kind of siding with Jason here. Not that I don't like Gausman as much. It's that where he's going in drafts, there's this very interesting group of pitchers like right after him. I think I'd rather almost take a hitter and then take his teammate, Jose Berrios, who's not the strikeout pitcher, but he's giving you the 200 innings. Not that maybe him being in there for an entire year may not benefit him as well, but there's so many pitchers. I mean, there's Frankie Montas going around there. There is Joe Musgrove. I mean, there's so many pitchers I could name here. So it's just, you got to take him right before that group. And I'm not sure I necessarily am sold on him being better than that giant group going after him. So I don't think I'm necessarily going to be selecting him. But yeah, what do you think, Rob, on Kevin Gausman?
I feel like anything I say, I'm just going to be accused of being a homer on this particular podcast. So these are my honest opinions, and I was honest about Ryu and not particularly positive about Ryu. Toronto is obviously not San Francisco to pitch in, but Pete Walker has done some amazing things with Toronto starting pitchers. We talked about Ryu. We talked about Berrios after he came over. The Jays are a franchise now, and it feels weird having watched some bad Toronto pitching staffs over the years. They know what they're doing with their pitchers. They have a game plan. So it's not that they don't go into some tough stadiums, including back to Baltimore. We'll see how tough that actually is. But Kevin Gausman's a really, really good pitcher. I have him as my 15th ranked starting pitcher for this year. So I think his price is real nice and real sweet. And I think if you wait on starting pitcher and he's your SP1, you can absolutely do just fine. And if he's your SP2, you're in very good shape. So I don't think he's a steal where he's going, but nor do I think he is overrated. And I have Barrios ranked basically the same. I have like none of the names you said. Like, yes, Musgrove is very good, and yes, Frankie Montas. Everybody loves Frankie, which sounds like a bad CBS sitcom. Thursdays at 9:30. Everybody loves Frankie. Tune in this fall. But Kevin Gausman is in no way inferior to any of those guys for this season.
I should step in. I didn't mean inferior. He just happens to be going before them. It's a price thing.
Sure.
I don't.
Yeah. So to me, I have him ranked higher than all of those guys. So for me, it will really depend on where in the round I'm drafting, what my ADP is, whether I end up with Gausman, because I'm not reaching for Gausman, but that will just be a draft flow type of thing, I think, in terms of whether I get a Gausman or a Montas or a Musgrove or a Barrios.
Just because we brought up Montas, he is a similar key weapon that Gausman does.
Yeah.
Is there any concern because of the kind of the breakout season Gausman had in 2020 through 27.7% of the split finger, increased that to 35.3? The pitch itself is great, historically hard, like literally painful to throw. Is there any worry at all that him increasing that as much as he did last year? Is there any worry? It's something that I don't know if there's just enough people just don't know enough to have a full discussion about it. But here I am. I just want to kind of bring it up because it's an interesting thing, because not that many pitchers rely on a split finger as much as these Montas and especially like Gausman.
Yeah, I mean, Gausman has been relatively healthy despite an elevated split finger usage. I don't know how to model what the increased injury risk is going from very high to even higher usage. But look, if every pitcher has a 2 in 5 chance of going onto the IL at some point, going into the season, certain pitchers we know have higher rates. So let's say Jacob deGrom has a slightly higher than an average pitcher. I don't think that Kevin Gausman he's not that old. He's kind of still in the sweet spot of the career. He doesn't have that much mileage on his arm. So a smarter, maybe my podcast host Jeff Zimmerman can model out whether splitter pitchers who increase usage from year A to year B have an increased injury risk. Oh, look who has joined us in the chat room. Speaking of injuries, but I think there are good reasons to be concerned about Gausman. I'm not sure injury risk is top of the list for me, but it's a good question. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's funny. It's I want to turn this over to Brian too. It's I don't even know if it's injury risk as much as it's just hard to maintain sometimes. Sometimes you can just kind of lose it for a bit, because of Montas. He had his own back injuries and stuff in 2020, but I don't know enough about it to even talk about it. So it's kind of why I was asking you. I want to get general thoughts, because it's just I think it's a really important thing in Gausman's background that no one really talks about. And there's probably a reason for that, because it's really hard to quantify, into any kind of actionable information. Brian, what do you think of Kevin Gausman?
I am more with Rob on this one. I'm pretty much in on
shocked.
I am in on Gausman at this price. And I do think you were talking about, I think there's an argument to be made that, you could take Barrios over him, and I may do it every now and then. They're literally both going the exact same spot in the last 10 draft champions from the NFBC. Yeah, I'm in on him. I mean, obviously, he had to be downgraded going from San Francisco to Toronto just simply because of the ballpark, even though San Francisco is not quite the pitcher's park it used to be. But, I mean, that's been corrected in the price. I mean, he was going – I forget what the market was when he was still a free agent before he signed, but he was definitely going much higher than this. So I'm still in on him. I get why Jason feels the way he does. And I definitely, in the past, I've worried a little bit about if the innings will be there with Gossman, but he's kind of been showing it. And then if you don't want to take that risk, then Barrios is there for you too. But I think Gossman's basically at a fair price, and I really like the pitcher that he's turned into. I really don't have very many concerns with him.
All right, and that's Kevin Gassmer talking about. That was Jason's overrated pitcher. Me and Brian have the same overrated pitcher, so I'll let Brian take it from here. We'll throw a couple of barbs Jason's way finally here. Who is our overrated pitcher from the American League East?
That would be Sugar Shane Boz, and
Is that his nickname, or are you just making that up?
I think that's what they call him. Yeah, I've heard it here and there.
Sugar Shane McClanahan.
There's a lot of
Shanes.
Shanes. You know what
There's two Shanes, but Sugar Shane McClanahan, he's got it in his Twitter handle.
Oh, he does. Okay.
Oh, yes.
I totally made that up. But Boz Skaggs,
it's a weird thing to make up about a baseball player. It's weird to name him Sugar.
It is
because he gives it up so sweet.
Yeah, it's kind of an affectionate term. I don't know that I should have done that, but he's going 121, and for me, it just comes down to it's not surprising. It's just the innings. I don't know how many we're going to get out of him. He only came up and pitched the 13 actually in the regular season last year. I don't know how many we're going to get. I certainly don't doubt the talent. I don't doubt the Rays. I don't doubt any of that stuff. But I just want to know how many innings he's actually going to pitch. And for him to be going 121 right now, and with some of the arms behind him, he's going ahead of Zach Gallen. No, I just think that's ridiculous. There's just too much hype there. There are other young guys with a lot of hype. Logan Gilbert's actually going behind him. I would be more interested in Gilbert. I'd be more interested in Framber Valdez. Just kind of going down the list, I'd rather have Ian Anderson. I just think there's a lot of hype for a fantastic young pitcher. There could be a scenario where he's not even with the ball club possibly to start the year. I don't know. I'm not sure how many innings we're going to get out of him. That's really it for me. I think he's fantastic. I think any innings that he does pitch this year will be dominant, but I would rather be having him after probably pick, I don't know. I don't want to make this sound too ridiculous. I probably want him more at about 250, like double where he's going right now. That's my thoughts on Boz, Sugar Shane.
I'm not as extreme. I'm not as extreme as Brian is on Sugar Shane here. I think he's overrated due to innings. I don't know what the Rays are going to do. Even if he's in the rotation to start the year, I'm not exactly positive how they'll use him. If he'll get to the fifth inning every time out. When he pitches, I expect him to be great. I long term love it. Dynasty leagues, he's great. But this season, I think that's a bit early for someone who has some serious innings concern for multiple reasons. That's basically my entire reason. He's getting pumped up more and more. And I feel like, if we get closer to the season, especially if he looks good in spring training, fingers crossed, there's going to be that he only needs one guy in the league to jump him. And I feel like he's going to continue to jump up even further. And I just don't know what to expect. I expect him to be good. I just don't know how much good we're going to get. So Jason, go ahead, step in and defend your guy.
I'm not defending it. We know what the club should do with him. We saw it last year. Look at Shane McClanahan, 123 innings. That's what Shane McClanahan threw with it. And you even go back to Blake Snell. Blake Snell's rookie year threw 89 innings. The second year threw 127. So if you have Shane Boz down, before I forget, Earl Stroman and Shane Boz's father should be an arm wrestling pay-per-view event. You want to talk about big bulky dads? Shane Boz's dad is wow. But anywho, if you have your numbers, whatever you're looking at, you see Boz projected for 140, get some white out, whatever kids use these days, and fix that, because that's not in the cards. I just don't see that happening. And you look at his workload. In 2019, looking at 81 innings. Last year, he threw about 85 plus what he did with the Olympics. So maybe 100. Given the way this club tends to do about 20% year over year at the most, there's just no way he's working more than 125. If he does, I'm stunned. Plus, you got to factor in the postseason work he did as well. But You saw what they did last year with McClanahan. This is an 18 to maybe 20 batters face situation. And however efficient he is with those 18 to 20 batters will determine how long he stays in the game. But they don't do it by innings count. They do it by batters faced. And if he's efficient, 3 to 4 pitches per plate appearances, he can get through that. He can stay out there longer. But if he's foul ball, 5, 6, 7 pitches, he won't even make it through 4 complete innings. And we've seen that with McClanahan as well. So if you want to know what Baz is doing, go back and look at McClanahan's numbers last year. I expect a similar season.
All right, and that's Shane Baz. And you were mentioning was ATC has him for 121 innings. Shane Baz, Steamer has him for 118. Zips has him for 85 and 90. Fangraphs has him for 104. So I mean that's kind of the range. So what's interesting with that is what's out there. How much he continues to get kind of popped up, puffed up. I guess it's just the prospect thing. People just the shiny new thing. People love, cats and laser pointers. That's sometimes people just want to chase after it. What do you think, Rob?
Last year at this time, we just replaced Shane Baz with Julio Urias, right? There's no chance the Dodgers have 7, 8, 9 starting pitchers, and Julio Urias, he's like he pitched a day and a half last year. There's no way they let him go deep into the season. And then, am I allowed to swear on this podcast, or am I not allowed to?
By all means,
and then shit happens because it's baseball. And Jason hit at the end the counter argument on why I'm probably not on Shane Baz, despite that. First off, that's not a particular, because Julio Urias did that last year. It's not a particularly compelling reason why Shane Baz will this year. But my bigger concern is, even if the Corey Kluber experience turns out badly and McClanahan gets hurt and all these things happen, my concern is less that the Rays say, well, we have to pitch him every 5 days. I can see a scenario actually where over under he makes 27, 28 starts. That I could buy because that's baseball and he's that good. So they need him in a really tough division. We just need him to keep going.
They were actually letting Glasnow do that early. Blake Snell was probably shaking his head. Why are you letting this guy do it? But they were letting Glasnow go.
My concern, though, is unlike the LA Dodgers, who, if you're pitching well, will let you get into the 6th and 7th inning, especially when things weren't going well. My concern is the Rays are annoying as heck with the 3rd time through the order thing. Good for real baseball, crap for fantasy. And I could see a lot of 5th inning, 1-1 game. Baz has 10 strikeouts, 1 walk through 5 is awesome. And he's out of the game in the 5th, which, you've gotten 10 strikeouts. You've gotten 5 good innings, but you didn't get a win. So, why did Urias have the season he had? He had 20 wins because the Dodgers didn't just use him all year. They let him go deep into games. And for me to make a pick 120, an 8th round pick, I need him to pitch great, sold. He will be very good. I need him to pitch volume, maybe. And I need him to contribute as a starting pitcher, not just the strikeouts, not just the ratios, but also I need to get some wins for him to make that, because that's a big pick. And for all of these things to come together, there's a chance of it all coming together, but there's a way more downside than upside. So I love the player. I'd love everybody to hear this and this to get repeated over and over again, and for him to drop 3-4 rounds. It doesn't have to drop that much because he's talented enough that I could convince myself to buy in, but 120 is that's a lot of shekels.
And I would say in the 25 starts that McClanahan made last year, only 6 times was he allowed to go over 5 innings.
Yeah, that's the Rays.
He still won 10. He still won 10 games in spite of that.
But that's luck. Just the percentage, the percentage luck likelihood. If you can only go 5 innings of you getting the win, even on a really good team, and Tampa's obviously going to be a good team again. It's just your odds are not awesome.
Jordan Montgomery is over there looking at him going, dude, what the hell? How does this work?
Hey, I mean, if anyone out there really wants, again, the shiny new thing, maybe pass over Baz and go back into the Jordan Montgomery area and pick up Tanner Hawk if you really want. someone. He's a lot cheaper, and he's kind of in the same boat.
To be clear, Boz is way better than those guys.
Oh no,
Like,
way better. Well, yeah, no.
You are insulting Boz if you compare him to those guys. He is
Well,
like
there's a difference
Jason knows
between-
better than I do. Let us not poo-poo the talent. The talent is ridiculous.
Yes.
Montgomery's a nice pitcher. Like the other guys are nice pitchers. He's awesome.
Yeah, I don't buy a ticket to a
amazing.
baseball game to watch Jordan Montgomery. I will buy a ticket if I'm at home. If Boz is pitching today, I'm going to the game.
You're buying a ticket because Raj Boz is going to be there.
Yeah, right.
We're here to see Sugar. What? Yeah, well, actually, man, I didn't mean drop back in the draft to get Montgomery. I meant Tanner Hawk, but who is also nowhere not near as good as Boz is going to be. But yeah, I'm just saying if you want to take a risk, do it a little later. So that is all of our overrated pitchers. And as we are a good healthy 40 minutes over the time we usually are for the show, we are getting to our favorite late round picks, and Rob is going to lead us off here. So a couple we each just picked out a player that we really like in very late drafts for various reasons. So Rob, give us your homer pick here for
we were each entitled to one homer pick. It was decided, and this is an easy one for me. So it's Kevin Biggio. Last year at this time, Kevin Biggio was a 5th round pick. In the FBC main events last March, he was picked 68-79. And I could not have been more off of Kevin Biggio last year. All of and it's become, I know, a joke in certain quarters now. Why would you take Bo Bichette when you can have Kevin Biggio 4 rounds later? Aren't they basically the same guy? And that was obvious.
Exactly.
At the time, it was per se ridiculous. He was never Bo Bichette. But we should stop and pause on why was he a 5th round pick last year? These are not stupid people who are paying the $1,700 to get into the NFBC main. So there were 2 big reasons. It was the on-base skills and it was the stolen base potential with enough power that was there for him to put up an interesting power speed run combo. There was also an assumption, and I disagreed at the time, that he'd hit near the top of the lineup because of that on-base skill and because he was the only left-handed batter in the lineup. That's gone. I'm not making the argument he's going to bat first or second for the Jays probably ever again. But what I will argue is, despite the struggles last year, and the struggles were real, and I'm happy to address the struggles, for his relatively short career now, if you put it over 162 game average, his 162 game average is 91 runs, 21 home runs, 70 RBIs, 16 stolen bases, 235 batting average. That is not worth a 5th round pick, but it is worth a 19th round pick, I think. And I think that the Jays will add a hitter whenever things open up again. They won't replace Marcus Semien, but they will try to sign a guy in that tier. Somebody, it won't be Carlos Correa to move to 3rd, but they'll try to get a guy to add another bat to the lineup. But I think Biggio will be the opening day, either 3rd baseman, 2nd baseman, or kind of 4th outfielder. I think he will get 550 to 600 plate appearances and a 20 home run, 15 stolen base, 240 batting average is eminently plausible for him. And in the 20th round, that ain't too shabby. Does he hit the ball hard? No, his StatCast data is gross. Can he hit good fastballs? Not so far, and I really hope he got one of those pitching machines that the Giants have that throw the ball crazy hard, and he just spent all winter trying to get better at hitting fastballs. But he was good enough before last year, that before the injuries and before the struggles, and the Jays management want it to work out. So they will give him run to start the season. Will they give him run on June 1st if he's hitting 200 and sucking? No, they will move on. But I think he gets a legit shot. So for the price, there is not a lot of speed power guys available at that point of the draft. So I like him for a bounce back.
My late round Santiago Espinal shares need you to be a little wrong. But overall, that was a good reason there. That's Rob's favorite late round pick in the American League East, Kevin Biggio. Jason, who is your favorite late round target out of the
I
American
just
League East?
want I just want to chime in real quick on Biggio, and I like everything that Rob said. I think the overlooked part where, remember, he was dealing with back troubles last year too, so his StatCast numbers would be garbage if you can't, without your back, your power is just gone. And I firmly believe with him, like if he remembers perfect is the enemy of the good, because he has such an elite feel for the strike zone. Like, he does not want to expand his zone. And I believe what his problem was getting into is he's looking for his pitch, and then he's down in 2-strike mode because he hasn't been able to get there. And so if like he were more aggressive and not trying to control the entirety of the strike zone, find a good pitch to hit, not a great one, and be more aggressive, I believe we could see the other level Rob was talking about there, because that's what got him through the minor leagues. Was his, everybody talked about, oh man, this guy's just got complete command of the strike zone. He will not shake. And he got up, and then the major league pitchers were like, all right, we'll attack him. We'll see if what he can do. And he just would not expand. And rookies, we know, we're just going to get abused on the fringes of the strike zone, and I believe that's what happened to him. Now, my pick is deep. My pick is way deep, and I will fully admit this. My pick, I'm talking to you draft and hold folks. My pick is Rougned Odor, and I'm looking at him because every year you got somebody who comes out of nowhere and just turns a volume play into something of value. Jonathan Scope was a guy that I targeted heavily last year. I took him in the reserve rounds of AL-only drafts because nobody wanted Jonathan Scope last year. And I took him in reserve rounds and got quite level of production. So I'm looking at Odor this year as somebody Baltimore is going to play because Texas is paying 95% of his salary. Baltimore's giving him minimum wage, and Texas is paying everything else. And he is an extreme pull hitter. 24 of his last 25 home runs have been to the pull field. So everything they did in Baltimore should not matter for him because Odor pulls the ball. We saw what Cedric Mullins could do in that park last year. And I'm just looking at this like he cost you absolutely nothing. He is like in the 30-something round of draft and hold. Yeah, I took him in my last draft and hold. I got to put my money where my mouth is. But that's really where I'm going with it. Is he's a pull hitter in a park very friendly for left-handed pull hitters. And he's going to play a lot. And he's costing you nothing. He even has dual position eligibility going for you. So that's the guy that I have been recommending for deeper draft and hold formats. In any other format, I just wait and see if it happens. But in a thing where you've got it to where 600 players are going to get taken in a DC 50 or a full draft champions where it's 750, he's got to end up on somebody's roster. Make him yours.
He's going like around 430 right now, second, third base eligible. I guess you could do worse than adding him rather than like adding David Peralta to your outfield.
Can I make a counter argument?
Is this for David Peralta?
No, for Rougned Odor. I think most weeks you're better off playing nobody than Rougned Odor. I haven't run the math on that, but I think he's better than nobody. I think give me nobody. But that's just me. I'm joking.
All right, nobody's been taken. Would it shock you? The funny thing is that I had to double check this. He's also only 27 years old. I don't know how that happened.
That's very weird.
He feels like he's 32, 33. He's not.
Yeah, him and Nomar Mazara, when I see their ages, what?
It's just weird. But yeah, like I took in my DC 50, I took him in the third pick of the 33rd round. And yeah, even then it was like well above ADP, but it's just when I was looking at what I'm like, I want to take a shot here. I'm going to do it. And like while we've been on air, I took Chad Pinder in the 43rd round. I probably want Pinder over Odor long term, but there's always room. There's always room on my team for Chad Pinder. One of these years he's going to put it all together.
Swipe right.
Sugar Chad Pinder.
That's actually his Tinder profile handle is Pinder sugar Pinder.
And that was Rougned Odor. Brian, your late round target for the American League East.
A little bit awkward, but going at 471, Santiago Espinal. I'm gonna have to go with here.
Change your answer.
No, I'm just kidding. No. We're going to go back to the Rays pitchers and one that I like the value of, and that's Ryan Yarbrough. He is going at about 500 right now. I don't think he's going to come out and do anything spectacular. There's not going to be any kind of breakout or anything like that. But I think this is a serviceable pitcher that people started to get kind of hot on last year. He was kind of like moving up charts, I think, or draft boards whenever people realized how much the Rays really were going to use him after they did in the COVID shortened season. Well, really the last few years, man, really, I'm looking now. I mean, they've used him quite a bit, but I think that he's a guy that going around 500 will probably net 140 innings plus again. And I think, he had a 5.11 ERA last year and his peripherals were not fantastic, but they were much better than that. And I think that we could see him perform more in that range. I have a lot of trust, obviously, in the Rays and how they do things and how they'll use him. So this isn't incredibly sexy, but then again, we're talking about late round targets. I think, there's a bevy of pitching that you can get late, but at 500 to be able to get Ryan Yarbrough, I think he'll be able to turn in some solid innings for you. So Yarbrough is my choice for a late round flyer.
Anyone have any thoughts to add on Ryan Yarbrough?
I'll defer to the room before I speak.
I had him and Jordan Montgomery together going in like the 2020 season. There were a couple of pitchers that like improved year over year on like for league average on like chase rate and in zone contact and swinging strike rate. He continued to sneakily get better and better, and then all of a sudden, just like he had this horrible cliff season last year. So it wouldn't surprise me for him to just kind of bounce back to that positive trajectory he was on. But I mean, the floor here is unusable. So I mean, there's a big difference between his floor and his hopeful ceiling.
All
Rob,
right,
did
so
you say something?
my thoughts on him. He's not that far off the floor right now. And so he's got some unusual things. Like he's better when an opener is in front of him. You look at his career. If somebody just takes the first three batters, he tends to have better outings. He is somebody who absolutely has to have fine command to execute his repertoire because he doesn't, he cuts it, slides it, spin, but he tries it. He's pitching to the periphery of the strike zone. And when he falls behind in counts, he either has to have the willingness to walk that guy because he has nothing to challenge those people. And so that's how he pitches. I mean, he's like an 80s throwback pitcher is really what he ends up being. But his velocity dropped a bit last year, and he was working down in the 82 to 84 range, and that's just not usable. And so he earned that 5.11 ERA because the command wavered, the fastball velocity wasn't there, and he was giving up a lot of hard contact. But when they allow him to pitch behind an opener, he finds some success. I also believe that he's going to be one of the guys packaged up in one of these trades. It feels like they've got a lot of moves stacked and racked and ready to go. And like, he's one of the guys that they can make a move with, or if they bring somebody else in. But I believe his days in Tampa Bay are numbered. And if he sticks around this year, it's going to be more of a swing guy. And perhaps you saw Rasmussen make the move from the pen to the rotation per se last year. Maybe it's Fireisen this year, who's got similar command issues, but he's at least got stuff. And you see Yarbrough go back to being that bulk guy or using the opener because he is not a pure starter.
Yeah, and if he went to almost any other team and it was said, you're getting 32 starts, good luck, buddy, he could be one of the worst starting pitchers in baseball. Like he is very much a Tampa pitcher. So I'm not crapping on the pick as a sleeper. He's cheap. But yeah, there are a lot of teams that if him and Kiermaier get packaged together to go to, God knows where.
Philly.
Sure. Almost anywhere. Like Yarbrough could really challenge for that title very quickly. He's interesting in Tampa.
All right, the last pick is mine for the show. My favorite late round pick for the American League East is Jonathan Loaisiga. This is a lot of things. There's injury concern, obviously, with Loaisiga. I don't think he's going to go through the entire season unscathed, but there's a lot of reasons to like him. Ratios, strikeouts when he's in there, and he's going to soak up probably some wins, probably some saves. And Aroldis Chapman had a weird year. I mean, he's another year older. He had problems with the spin stuff as far as the sticky substance went, but he kind of overcame that and looked a little better at the end. At a certain point, he overcame this. At a certain point, he looked done. He like went full Ricky and Keel in one game and was just hitting the backstop over and over again. So I wouldn't put it past him to just completely let the wheels fall off. Chad Green's also in the bullpen. They have a very good bullpen. Holmes is in there. I mean, they have like just a whole bunch of closers. But I think Loizaga is good because even if he doesn't get the saves, I think that he could vacuum up more, a ton of wins as well, just by, so I think that as far as this year, when I think relief pitchers appear to be moving further up, at least the ace ones, if you want to add someone to your, if you want to add someone into your rotation pitching staff, rather than go with like a crappy pitcher or a bad reliever you think could get saves, I love Loizaga because he's going to do well and he can get you some wins and saves. So there's a lot of paths to him helping you. And the upside is him just straight up getting a ton of saves if the wheels fall off for Chapman. So, Loizaga is my guy.
It's got intriguing stuff.
I would certainly rather him than Ryan Yarbrough.
You guys just wait and see.
We've been talking for an hour and 58 minutes just to tell everyone draft Loizaga over Ryan Yarbrough, and that's been the turn.
My only critique of the pick, and it's not really a critique because Loizaga is a talented enough relief pitcher that there'll be lots of weeks where you are better off using him as your ninth pitcher in mixed leagues than your like crappy starting pitcher with a tough matchup. So he has value even if he doesn't close a single game. I don't love speculating on bullpens where it's one of two or three guys. And I agree that Chapman, there is a percentage chance that the cliff comes. A lot of the arrows are pointing in the wrong direction for him. But I have no sense if it would be Loizaga or Chad Green or somebody else in that bullpen. And I don't love speculating on kind of next guy up when it's not clear who the next guy up is, or if it's going to be a bullpen by committee. The Yankees obviously have liked between Mariano Rivera and then Chapman having the guy, but that has a lot to do, I think, with having Mariano Rivera and then Chapman. So I don't know what they do. But other than that, I think it's a great pick.
Well, and to be fair, not all of the arrows, but some of the same arrows were pointing in that same direction for Chapman this time last year, and nothing ever materialized.
Totally. I would draft, just to be clear, I would draft Chapman still as a closer and be just fine with taking Chapman. So this is not every closer is one pitch away from the end. Chapman, I think, may be a little bit closer to the end than some other guys, and a bit more risk than some people have internalized. But I am just fine with drafting Chapman. This is not a.
This is also PTSD for me watching the Rick Ankiel game. I was at the Rick Ankiel game, the one in the playoffs. I was there, and then I watched this Chapman game on TV. Like, what is this? This guy's going to be released tomorrow.
This is why I have told you many times, Matt. You need to stop watching games. That's part of your
fantasy
problem.
baseball. Don't watch baseball.
So go back and watch the Rick Ankiel game when he was a center fielder and threw out two guys from deep center in Colorado.
Absolutely.
Oh, good.
That to me was like one of the best baseball feats I've ever seen.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
All right, so that'll do it for the Turn 2 Podcast, American League East edition. Thank you for hanging out, everybody. Great guest, Rob, Jason. Thank you for taking the time. I know we went a little long here, but not that you really need any reintroduction to anyone, but we do this at the end of the show as a formality. So, Rob, if you could let everyone know where they can chase you down, where they can harass you about your Wander Franco opinion, and anything you got coming up, maybe cool on the Launch Angle Podcast.
Yeah, we were supposed to have Phil Dussault, NFBC champ, and the robot tomorrow. He's apparently checked himself into the hospital with an appendicitis just to get out of doing our podcast. Which, look, if he's willing to go to those,
some guys will do.
Yeah, I hope Phil gets better soon. He'll be on at a different time. So we have Jared Cross, the father of Steamer, on tomorrow's podcast. We are going to do a deep dive into all the questions people have about Steamer tomorrow.
Ask him about playing time, please.
It's Fangraphs. I know the answer to that, but we will answer it because I assume that is the question he gets more than any other question. So yeah, check out the Launch Angle if you haven't listened to it before.
Jason, same thing. Everyone let anything new you're up to, and again, so people can come after you with pitchforks and fire for your Teoscar Hernandez take.
Yeah, three things. So I'm on the Sunday Sleeper in the Bus podcast. Every Sunday it's Justin Mason driving, and then somebody else. We have guests every Sunday coming through. So you can hear that. Usually that gets posted Sunday afternoon. The Collect Calls column at RotoWire. The latest one went up today. looking at NL Central bold predictions. I pick a hitter and a pitcher from every team and tell you why a possibility for certain guys. Like I talk about Paul DeYoung and the hitting coach he's working with this winter. Why I really love Cody Hewer as a deep sleeper in the Cubs bullpen for things, just as an example. And then lastly, the Rougned Odor fan club meets tomorrow night, and we'll meet every week following until he hits his 30 homers. And I could do my shirtless victory lap. But yeah.
Awesome. Brian, you were rather tame. You kind of went like you didn't really shoot any shade at any high percentage targets. You went Christian Vasquez, Ryu, Baz, Yarborough. I mean, the Yankees fans get enough for Aaron Judge, so there's bigger fish to fry than coming after you for that. So you're safe this week. Where can
I'm pretty
everyone
safe.
find you?
Yeah, I changed the handle. It is at BJC Moore, spelled differently. You can see there. You can follow me there on Twitter. The only kind of extracurricular things I do outside of the Turn 2 podcast here is upload somewhat thought-provoking and sometimes comical videos. I also am featured now weekly on the Draft Champions podcast with Zach Waxman with the Fantasy Baseball Bite segment. I think you'll get a lot out of it. We really dig up and find some news to nibble on that not a lot of people talk about within fantasy baseball. And I really work hard on that. So I think you'll enjoy that segment as well.
Is that stuff even true?
Hey, Waxman's in my DC 50.
Peek behind the curtain. Is it even true, the stuff you say?
Well, I think he's speaking with a consortium tonight. Jake Hallisker and Dave McDonald. A new episode should be out tomorrow, and I think you'll find the CBA findings that I have on the new one very intriguing. So, just a little tease there for you.
Okay. All right, everybody. And you can find me on Twitter, MATTWI77IMS. My By the Numbers column over NBC Sports Edge will be back next week on Tuesday. And make sure to subscribe. We're doing these shows live, just started doing them. Subscribe to YouTube if you want to drop into the comment section going forward. The show will be going daily. Once we get the green light on a season, short little 10-minute videos in the morning. And subscribe to the Turn 2 podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. So again, thank you for listening. Enjoy the show. We'll be back next week with the American League Central. Good night, everybody.